Howdy y'all, thank you for joining us today for this playthrough of Marvel Champions, the next evolution. This is where I like to take, I just got the next evolution in, I unboxed it, and then what I like to do whenever we get the hero decks, or in the case of the scenario packs like this, where they come with 2 decks, is I like to take the hero decks, unchanged, sleeve them up, shuffle them up, and play them unchanged against, usually, it used to be Rhino, and then when they came out with the X-Men one for flavor, I decided to do the first scenario, which was Sabretooth, and then in this one, we did, with Domino, we just now finished the Morlock Siege, which is the first scenario of the next evolution. And just see how it fares up. And when they come out with the other decks, because if you're new to this, what they typically do is do a campaign scenario like thing, and then they do like about 3 or 4, usually 4 hero decks that come out along with it, along with a villain scenario set also. Which actually I never thought about. I've never done the scenarios, the villain scenario sets. I should go back and do videos for those now that I'm saying that out loud. But definitely something I should look into and mark on the calendar to go back and do all those. But for the most part, it's what I do. And just see how they hold up. That way, if you have a friend and y'all just bought this and your friend's new and they don't have cards, they don't want to build a deck, you could just hand them one of these decks. And is this deck, do these decks work well enough to be able to hold up on their own? Plus, each of these decks, if you haven't played this before, usually these decks are built with cards in mind to help that character be played to their abilities. And then there's usually older cards that you can use that can make these stronger, but for the most part, usually you end up using these same decks if you're going to, or these same cards, if you're going to stay in that said aspect. With that being said, long story short, that's what we're doing now, is we're about to do, Cable is going to try to stop the Morlock Siege that is taking place. If you joined me before, you know how I do these. If it's your first time, this is to let you know what I'm going to do is the first round will be boring, because I'm going to basically teach the game as I play through the first round, and anytime we hit anything in the current in the future rounds after that that is new that I did not mention in the first rounds. But I kind of do this to teach so that anybody who's interested in this game can at least follow along if they're watching this playthrough as their first one and kind of know what's going on. Of course, there's things I miss in this game all the time because I've played this game so much that there's a lot of times I just forget little steps that hopefully won't confuse you too much, but at least enough to where you can follow along and kind of see if it's at least your play style is to a game you like to play. And I like doing that because this is one of my favorite games to play. I love playing it. I typically now don't play it as much solo as I used to. I do play it more multiplayer with other people and play it with the campaigns. Either way, it's a long intro, so let's get into it. The whole time we've been here, I've been shuffling the villain encounter deck, and we'll talk about what all is in there. Alright, let's get started. We'll do a couple more shuffles of this. Just I don't remember if I've done it on camera, just for showing on camera that I shuffled a little bit. Alright. Alright, let's go through all the setups. First off, we got the villains to set up. So in this one, when you play this game, there's going to be a scenario that's got a scheme that's going to be going on, and there's going to be a villain trying to pull off said scheme. After playing through the Domino one, I mean, I kind of had read over the knock-knock before going into it, but then after now playing through the Domino one, I kind of know what's going on. What's happening here is the Marauders are trying to break through the Morlock door to get to the Morlocks and finish them off. So we're going to be trying to stop the Marauders from doing this Morlock Siege. In that, there's going to be 7 villains. There's normally 2, or just normally just 1 villain with 2 stages, and we win by knocking out that villain through both stages. But in this case, there's 7 villains, and you're going to see when I flip this over, it's going to change the win condition a little bit because we're going to be drawing one of these random Morlocks, and normally these are double-sided, and double-sided cards I put in the perfect fit sealeds. But in this case, A is usually, and you're going to see A is if it's a basic, or if you're playing standard, and B is if you're playing on expert. Since we're doing this as a standard, I just went ahead and put them in black sleeves. I like to put all my villains in jet dragon shields, just so that they're easily identifiable as the villains cards. And then we're going to shuffle this up, and you're going to see why in the setup. I'm just going ahead and knocking this step out now. Should be good enough shuffles there, and that'll be our villain stack. All right. So first thing on setup, we need to do this knock knock, and it says Marauders on side A, which we did, is going to be in the deck. There's side A of the Marauders I showed y'all, and then it says to put Morlock Siege in there, which is Morlock Siege encounter, and the standard encounter set, which I did do. That's all inside that deck that I just now shuffled up. And then it tells you to put 2 modular encounters, which you can do whatever you want. In this case, I used what it said, which is the military grade and mutant slayers side encounters. And they're all shuffled in there along with my obligation. So that deck is all set up and ready to go. Let's see what else we need to do. Put the routed environment into play. Oh, and I just realized I'm going to have to go through the deck because there's something I left in there. But it's talking about this card here. We put it into play, whether it's standard or expert. And cards under here are not in play. As a forced response, after the villain is defeated, put it under here. Discard each minion that shares a title with the top villain of the villain deck. That villain is in play. The villain activates against each player in play order. So what that is saying, in short terms, if you are new to this, is, like I said, normally it's 2 stages of villains. Instead, we're going to be fighting 3 different villains. And I'm going to go ahead and reveal it. It's going to tell us here. It's going to tell us to reveal one of these. I'm going to go ahead and reveal it. So we're going to be starting out fighting against Gray Crow here. So what happens is if I knock out Gray Crow, he's going to go underneath this card is what it's saying. And then we're going to reveal the next villain. And if that villain's minion is in play, because for each of these villain Marauders, there's also a minion card in here where they might be coming out to help their villain buddies. And if that, what this is saying is, when we reveal that new villain, if that minion is in play, it is removed from play. And then that villain goes into play as the new villain. And then that villain immediately activates against all players. That's what that card says. Now let's get to the rest of this. Put the routed environment, we did that. Set the hide, treachery, and each Morlock ally aside. I have the Morlocks to the side. I realized I forgot to take the hide one out. I was going to say if we hit it, but in gameplay I might forget. So let me go do that real fast. Alright, that should be more than enough shuffles. Put that there. Alright, so we went ahead and did that. And then it says shuffle the villains together, which we did. To create the villain deck, the top card of this deck is in play. Alright, so we flip this over. And this is the main scheme that they're trying, the Marauders are trying to pull off. Knock, knock. It's going to start with 1 threat on there per player. And so I don't forget, I'm going to go ahead and put that threat over here. 1 threat on there per player. We're playing solo, so 1 threat. And they pull off this main scheme if they get 6 threat on there per player. So they already have 1 to the 6 to pull off this main scheme. If they pull off this main scheme, then we go on to this next one. And typically, that's the way the schemes work. And usually the last main scheme has a condition on there that makes you lose the game. If they pull it off. Alright. It also has a forced response. And it lets us know right here. Normally this is always here, and it's just going to say a number of threat that gets added on here per villain phase in the first step. We'll get to that during this teach. But right now it's saying +1 threat per player, and it's got a forced response star here, which we go to see what that is, which says that after resolving step 1 of the villain phase, place 1 knock counter here. If there are at least 3 knock counters here, advance to stage 2A. So this will advance if it gets 6 threat on here, or if there are 3 knock counters here. So basically they're trying to break down the door to get to the Morlocks. So we're there to try to stop them. Now it does let us know we win if there are 3 villains under the routed, the players win the game. So if we can manage to knock out 3 of the villains, which we saw how that works, and there's 3 under here, so we knock out 3 villains, we win the game. That's how we win. There's the 1 threat that it starts with. Alright, that is the setup for the villains. Let's move on to the setup for the heroes. We start in alter ego form. There is 1 player who will be the first player. In this case, I am solo, so I am the only first player. So that goes there. Next, we start with our starting hit points of 12, which if you saw my unboxing, I was pretty impressed with. 12 hit points. Cool. And then we have a hand size of 6. So we draw 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Next, all players would get to do a mulligan. With a mulligan, it's saying that I can discard any number of cards I want to from my hand into my discard pile, and then draw up to my hand size of 6 again. So if I were to discard 2 into my discard pile, I have 4 in hand, I would draw 2 more from my deck. Typically on these playthroughs, I never take the mulligan. In this case, I am going to take a mulligan actually. I'm going to discard these 2. So I draw up to my hand size. I need to draw 2 new cards to replace those. Next, we have to do any setup. So we look at Nathan Summers, and it says here, first off, in my deck build, I could have had any of these new cards that they had in here. They're called player side schemes. I can have any aspect, no matter what aspect I am built to, in there. So we saw that with the unboxing. Next, the Soldier X thing says that setup is search my deck and discard pile for a player side scheme and put it into play. So in this case, if I would have had one in my hand, I would have discarded just so I could start with another card in hand anyways. But we didn't have one in hand or in my discard pile, so we're going to go through the deck and go find a side scheme to put into play. Alright, I'm going to go get Technovirus Purge here. Probably shouldn't. It's pretty rough, but it's going to beef me up a little bit, so we're going to go ahead and do that. So we're going to put this into play. So let me go ahead and talk about side schemes while I shuffle here. So what a side scheme is... Oh, I didn't realize I had a glare there. What a side scheme is it's a scheme that's going to go... Unlike the main scheme, where if they pull it off, they win. A side scheme is just something that is a kind of an annoyance that kind of just sits there and makes the game harder to a degree. Like in the case of this one, actually this one doesn't really hinder anything other than Cable's the only one that could do anything on that one. But if I could pull it off, this would go to the victory display because it says victory there. And it lets us know that while Technovirus Purge is in the victory display, Nathan Summers and Cable gain the Sonic trait, and Cable gets +1 basically to all of his stats, his thwart, attack, and defense. So that seems like something I might want to get pulled off pretty early to give me a bunch of pluses to my stats. Alright, a few more shuffles here for my deck. And now we put this into play. It comes with 5 threat on it. So this just kind of sits there and it's going to be an annoyance normally. In this case, it's just something I want to pull off so that I can basically get pluses to my stats. So there's the 5 threat on there, and let's try to see if we can pull this off. I did realize we forgot to give Grey Crow his hit points, which he starts with 9 hit points per player. So since we are solo, he has 9 hit points to knock him out. That was the setup for Nathan Summers. So we're ready to begin. So the way this game works is a round consists of 2 phases. There's the hero phase, and then after the hero phase is the villain phase. When both those phases are done, the round is done, and you go on to the next round and rinse and repeat. So it's a back and forth of the hero, villain, so forth, so forth. So we start with the hero phase, and it starts with whoever the first player is. And the first player is just going to do actions until they do not want to do actions any longer. I call them actions, but they're just going to do things, and actions is one of them. I realized I skipped it and didn't do it until later in the last video, so I'm going to do it now. I kind of mentioned it, but let's go over it. We're going to be doing back and forth on those rounds until one of 3 things happen. Either one, normally it's knock out the villain through its 2 stages. In this case, it's knock out 3 villains. So when we do that, we win the game. Or we lose the game if the villains end up knocking, or if the bad guys end up knocking us out. Or the third thing is another loss condition. In that loss condition, it's if they pull off their overall arching main scheme, which, like we talked about, is going to be the last one on here. So if this one progresses, it'll flip to the next one, which will probably be the one that if they pull that scheme off, then they win the game. All right, another thing I'm going to talk about real fast. I know this has nothing to do with the playthrough, but it's for people who may or may not know. But during the X-Men Mutant Genesis box thing that came out, stores could, from their Asmodee rep, get these organized play kits. The organized play kits basically gave them these little mini booster packs with 3 cards, I believe, isn't it? It's either 3 or 4. And what they are is they're these full art promos of the cards from the Mutant Genesis. Or, in the case of, on some cards, they got the full art of the regular one, but then they also have an alternate full art that you can get. Like in the case with us, every time we play this game at our store as a demo, we hand out one of those packs to our players and for playing in the game. And include me, every time I get to play, I get to open one of those packs. And as you can see, I'm starting to build up my collection, but I'm still missing some of the cards. But the reason I bring that up, go check that out if you're interested in that one, is I did find out from my Asmodee rep that Next Evolution will be releasing the same kits to the stores, where they will have the alternate art / full arts in those packs for this Next Evolution whole cycle. And the reason I say the whole cycle is, you saw Colossus, which you know was in the Mutant Genesis thing, if you know or not, but Gambit, Cyclops, those were in... They had their own little hero packs. So it's a whole cycle from one campaign to the next. So they will be doing the ones for, they've already announced Angel and Psylocke. And I want to say there's someone else I'm not thinking of right now that will be in this cycle. So we will see those full arts also in that. I know it was a sidetrack, but let's get on with the game at this point. So the first thing I'm going to do is, one of the things you can do on your turn is you can play a card from your hand. When looking at cards from your hand, the cost of playing a said card is up at the top. And in order to pay for those costs, you have to discard cards from your hand as a resource in order to pay said costs. Because if you look at the bottom of every card has a number of resources, usually 1, but there are some with more. But every card has a number of resources on the bottom that basically count as the resource. So what that means is In this case, I want to play this card from hand. In order to play it, I have to pay one resource. The way I pay said resource is I discard this card, and it has one resource on it. So by discarding that card, that pays this cost. Now this card can come into play. This card is a support card, which means it is a card that comes out into play, and it is one I could just use in some fashion. And it lets us know here that it is an alter ego action that lets me exhaust Professor, which is what this card is, and then I get to choose to either draw one card or search my deck and discard pile for a player side scheme and add it to my hand. Alright, seems like a pretty decent one, but notice it said alter ego action. Alright, well, let's talk about the next thing you can do on your turn. Another thing you can do on your turn is you can activate any actions that you have out here in play. Well, I have an action here. But it also has a thing that says alter ego, which is saying I have to be in alter ego form. Alter ego form. So, I am in alter ego form. I'm going to do this action, which says exhaust Professor. So I'm going to exhaust Professor. And now I can either draw a card or search my deck and or discard pile for a player side scheme and add it to my hand. I'm going to draw a card. Next, I want to play another card from my hand, so I'm going to play Caliban here. He costs 3. I'm going to discard 2. But notice I need 3. Well, notice this card that is a resource. Resources usually have a special thing that they give you, and it tells you here that I get to double the number of resources this card generates while paying for a psionic card. So, I look at this card I want to play, and it says psionic on it here. So that means I get 2 for this one card. So there's my 3 resources to put this into play. What this is an ally. This is an ally that has 3 hit points, and it has some basic abilities here, which we'll get to what all these basic abilities mean here in a second. But I get to put this ally into play, and they're going to be helping me. There is a limit to the number of allies you can have into play. You can have 3 per player. If you put a 4th one into play, you'll have to discard one. But it also says here, as a response, after Caliban enters play, I get to discard cards from the top of my deck until an X-Factor, X-Force, or X-Men ally is discarded. And that ally goes to my hand. So, he's in play. I start discarding cards from my deck until I see an X-Factor, X-Force, or X-Men ally. I didn't think this through. I thought it said search. So now we're discarding all these cards till we see an ally. Oh, there's an ally. Is he X-Force, X-Factor, or X-Men? He is X-Force. So this goes to my hand. The rest of these go to my discard pile. Eesh. Lost some good cards there. Don't know if it was worth it. I want to put this sidearm into play, so it costs me 1. So I'm going to discard that ally I just got. There's my 1. To put this sidearm into play. This sidearm is an upgrade. An upgrade is something that has to attach to someone. In this case, it says to attach to an ally. And it lets me know there's only 1 per player. It lets me know also that the attached ally gets +1 attack and his attacks gain ranged. So it means that if I attach this to Caliban, because he's an ally, he now gets +1 attack because he had 2 attack before, so now he's got a 3 attack, and it gains ranged. What ranged is there's an ability called Retaliate. Retaliate says that if say an enemy has Retaliate and I attack them, anytime that character is attacked, they get to do a Retaliate damage back to who attacked them. Ranged lets you ignore Retaliate. That's not in play at the moment as far as we know, but that is what that means. Alright, another thing you can do on your turn is once per turn, as during your turn, you can switch between alter ego to hero and vice versa. And you'll notice that when we switch that they change their abilities off to the side here. And they also change in their card text and traits. So we're going to go ahead and switch to hero form, which is going to change our abilities, and we'll talk about those here in a second. And we also now have a responsibility here that says, after Cable defeats a side scheme, ready him, limit once per phase. What ready means is if Cable was exhausted, or turned sideways in this case, if a side scheme like this one that we put into play were removed from play, then we could ready him. Another thing you could do on your turn is called a basic action. The basic actions are listed on the left side of the card, and you have 4 of them. 3 of them in hero form and 1 in alter ego form. Now, in this case, what it's saying is we could do one of these basic actions. We're going to talk about the first one. The first one is, if I want to, I can exhaust Cable and I can thwart a scheme for this number of threats. So what I would do is I would exhaust him and I would go look over at a scheme. It's saying I could thwart for 2. So I would go to a scheme and I could remove 2 threat from a scheme. So I could remove this 1 threat from this scheme, or I could remove 2 threat from this scheme. Or I can exhaust Cable and I can attack an enemy for this number. Or if I have an attack coming into me, towards me, I can choose to exhaust Cable and I could defend and reduce the damage from the attack by this number. And that has to be done before you know, basically when a thing's attacking you, you have to choose then whether you're defending before any damage is figured out. And that'll make sense here. I'm sure we'll get attacked and have to do some defending. But anyways, and the other one, which is only available when you're in alter ego form, is I could exhaust Cable and I could recover this number of hit points back to my max. Well, I'm already at my max, so we couldn't do that. Plus, I'm not in alter ego form. So, either way, that is what we're about to do. We're going to go ahead and exhaust Cable, and we're going to thwart a scheme for 2 threat. So we're going to thwart this scheme, since it's the only Cable can remove threat from this, it said. So we're going to thwart this scheme for 2 threat. So it has 3 left on there to finish it off. Next, we're going to choose to attack with an ally. Well, remember, we talked about the way attack works is we exhaust a character and we get to do whatever it says here. So in this case, we're going to exhaust Caliban, and we're going to do 2 plus 1, because he has plus 1 attack, and we're going to do 3 damage to an enemy. Grey Crow is the only enemy in play, so we're going to choose to attack Grey Crow and do 3 damage to Grey Crow, taking him to 6. Now allies, if you'll notice, have a star underneath their abilities. Some don't, and I'm sure you'll see them if you get into the game more, but majority of the time they have 1 or 2 stars there. In this case, he has 1 star. That is called a consequence damage star. So, because Caliban chose to attack, Caliban has to take a consequence damage after the attack. So he has to take 1 consequence damage, and he has 2 hit points left. Once you have no more actions you want to do or any more cards that you want to play from your hand, you would end your turn and it would go to the next player in player order. We're in solo, so we're done with the player turn orders. So the last part of the hero phase is players can discard any number of cards they want to from their hand. I'm going to keep this, hoping to get Phantom X. I was checking to make sure he wasn't one of the ones discarded, because this is a card that is only usable with Phantom X in play, so we're going to hold on to this one. And once we've discarded down, we now draw up to our hand size. Well, if you'll remember, our starting hand size was 5, or 6, I'm sorry. But now in hero form, our hand size has changed to 5. And some heroes do have lower hand sizes, so you need to be aware of that when you're switching to your hero form. So we're drawing up to 5. We have 1, so we draw 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. We did not draw Phantom X. Boo. Once we've drawn up, we ready all the cards in our play area. And then we go to the villain phase. The first step of the villain phase is to accelerate the scheme by the number it shows here. It says +1 threat per player. So we add 1 threat to the scheme. Now there are 2 to the 6. But remember, it has a forced response. The forced response is after resolving a step 1, which was step 1 of the villain phase, place 1 knock counter here. Alright, we're going to put that knock counter there. If there are at least 3 knock counters here, advance to stage 2A. Alright, well there's not 3, so we are done with step 1. Step 2 is the villain and minions are going to activate. Now the villain is going to look at each player and they are going to activate depending upon what form that player is in. If that player is in alter ego form, then the villain will activate for one, by scheming I should say, and they will add threat to the main scheme. If the hero they are activating against is in hero form, or the identity I should say is in hero form, then they will attack doing damage, and that's when you would have to choose to defend. In this case, I am in hero form, so Grey Crow is going to attack. I'm going to choose not to defend, and this is really going to hurt, and you're about to see why. That means Grey Crow's doing 1 damage, but he also has a forced response here, or forced interrupt. And it says, when Grey Crow attacks you or an ally you control, which is attacking me, I have to discard the highest cost card I control, or Grey Crow gets plus X attack for this attack, where X is the printed cost of the highest cost card you control. So in this case, the highest cost card I control is Caliban here, who's cost 3, which means he's getting plus 3. Or I have to get rid of Caliban here, who's doing good amount of damage right now, who actually will eventually knock out Grey Crow. So he's going to get plus 3. And I should defend, but I don't want to. Anyways, I'm not defending. So there we go. So he's getting 1 plus 3. So he's at 4. Plus, since he's the villain, they get what's called a boost card, which means they deal themselves a boost card to their boost pile. In this case, he had no boost pile, so this is his boost pile. Because there are ways they could build them up over time later, or in other games. But after that, you're going to reveal these, but you're going to ignore everything on the card except for the bottom part right here. And all you're looking for is this symbol right here. For every one of that symbol, you're going to add +1 to whether they are scheming or attacking. That's called the villain thing. Or if there's a minion, they may have the villainous trait. So in this case, he gets +1, so he's already getting +3. +1 is 4. He's doing 5 damage to me. So I didn't defend, so I got to take 5 damage. Guess I didn't think this through all the way. And then next, all the minions would do the same activation that the villain just did, but it'd be the minions that are attached to that person. Alright. I'm going to talk about this symbol. If that symbol would have shown on there, then in that case, on the boost card, you would go over here and you would have to read what this is, and you would do whatever this boost area says. That's the only other time during the boost section that you care what the card says. Alright, next is the encounter phase. Each player is dealt one encounter card into their encounter card pile. And then after each player is dealt one encounter card, they have to deal with all the cards in their encounter pile. In this case, we only got the one that we were just dealt. And now we do care what the card is. So we flip this over. Of course we would. So we get the Technovirus Resurgence. What this is, it's an obligation. If you get the obligation, if this is multiplayer and say another player had drawn this, this would have to go to the Nathan Summers player, which is me. In this case, I'm solo, so it goes to me anyways. When revealed, I search my deck, discard pile, hand, and victory display for the Technovirus Purge and put it into play. Well, we know we ain't going to find it, so I'm not going to go through all that because it's right here. Attach this card to the Technovirus Purge. Okay. If you cannot, discard this card and deal yourself one face down encounter card. Alright, they kind of address that line now in the frequently asked questions. I understand it now, and what someone said online is false. Because there is a limit to how many player side schemes can be in play. Since we are playing solo, if there are if it's a 1 or 2 player game, then there can only ever be one player side scheme in play. So in this case, we would be bringing Technovirus Purge into play, but we'd have to get rid of a player side scheme, which we would get rid of Technovirus. If we chose Technovirus Purge, then in that case it wouldn't be in play to attach this to, so we'd have to do another encounter card. But in this case, it is in play. So we attach this to it, and what this is doing, it's going to add this to it, which this is an acceleration thing. What's going to do, it's going to add +1 acceleration during that step 1. So we definitely need to knock this out now because it's going to be zooming along. Now it actually is doing something, whereas before it was just going to beef me up, so I was trying to get it out of the way to just be beefed up. Now we got to get rid of it because it could possibly cost us the game. Alright, that was the encounter phase. The last step of the encounter step. The last step of the encounter phase, or villain phase, man, I'm just messing my words up left and right, is to take the first player marker and pass it to the player on the left. In this case, we're playing solo, so we are the only player, so we keep the first player marker. And that's the end of the round. We start over again with the hero phase, starting at the new round, and that's it. It's rinse and repeat, back and forth, hero versus villain, until either we knock out, in this case, 3 villains, or 3 Marauders, or the Marauders not manage to knock me out, or they pull off their main scheme. Alright, let's go to the beginning of my turn and see if we can pull this off. I'm going to have Caliban go ahead and attack Grey Crow for 3 again. He takes a consequence damage for doing such. I'm going to have Cable. I was going to have him recover, go with Alter Ego form and recover, but we got to get rid of that Technovirus Purge, so we're going to go ahead and remove 2 threat from the Technovirus Purge. Next, we're going to go ahead and switch to Alter Ego form. Now that we're in Alter Ego form, we're going to go ahead and activate the Professor, and we can choose to either draw a card or search our deck for our deck and discard pile for a side scheme. I could go in here and just get this side scheme. That way, if I just want it as a resource, if I want to put that into play. But I actually want to draw a card and see what I get, which is another side scheme. I want to go ahead and bring Grey Malkin in play here. I know I might be saying that wrong. Grey Malkin, however you want to say it. I have to discard 2 resources. There's my 2 resources. That brings Grey Malkin into play. It is a support, just like the Professor. It has a response that after a side scheme is defeated, I get to ready it. As a resource, I can exhaust Grey Malkin to generate a energy resource. So basically, I can exhaust this to pay for one when paying for a card. So like if I wanted to bring this card into play, of course I can't. I mean, I could. I guess I would get rid of Technovirus Purge, but then that would just discard it, which would stop that from basically giving that acceleration. But then I wouldn't get the pluses, and we're so close to finishing it off, so we don't want to discard it. So with that, I think I'm done with my turn. I want to keep all three of these cards in hand. So our hand size is now 6. We draw 3 new cards. 1, 2, 3. Ready all of our cards. We accelerate the scheme by +1 plus the other acceleration. So most likely they're going to pop this scheme this turn. At the end of step 1, add 1 knock counter. There are not 3, so it doesn't pull that off. Next we go to the villain activation. I am in alter ego form, which means he is going to scheme for 1, most likely enough to finish this off. He gets a boost card. He does not do this because that's only when he attacks. So he schemes for 1 plus 1, so 2 threat, which is enough to pop the main scheme. So now we have to do this, which says, when revealed, each player puts 1 set-aside Morlock ally into play under their control. So we get 2 allies into play under our control. It is a Morlock ally. And normally, like I said, you're going to have 3 allies, but you're going to see when we go through this card here, we get these Morlock allies. They are 1 thwart, 1 attack with 1 consequence star each and 5 hit points. They are victory -1. All that's saying is if they are removed from play, they don't go to my discard pile. They go to the victory display. And if you were playing through the campaign, you'd get -1 victory point because they're in there, or each one that's in there. This does not count to our ally limits, so it's not going to count against us. And card abilities cannot remove this ally from play, so there are some things that may say you have to remove this ally from play. They cannot be targeted on this, and you're going to see why. It has to do with that main scheme. And then the forced interrupt is when an enemy attacks you, it attacks a Morlock you control instead. So from now on, anytime it says that something's attacking me, they're not. They're attacking one of these Morlocks that I have in play. All right. And the reason I grabbed 2, you could probably saw it on here, but I didn't say it. It says 2 set-aside Morlock allies instead if this is a single-player game. I am playing a single-player solo game, so I got 2 Morlocks instead of 1 per person. All right. Shuffle the Hide Treachery into the encounter deck, so we'll do that here in a second. And if the previous stage was advanced by knock counters, give each Morlock ally a tough status card. Unfortunately, it was not. It was defeated or completed due to them breaking down the door. So we weren't able to toughen up. So now this flips over. And now, if they get 8 threat per player on here, they pull off this main scheme and complete it. And you'll see here it's going to say we lose. But anyways, as an action also, we can exhaust a Morlock ally and shuffle Hide from the encounter discard pile back into the encounter deck. Before I shuffle it in, I'll explain why that is there. And then it says if there are 3 villains under routed, so the same win condition, we still have to defeat 3 villains. And then if this stage is completed, or there are no Morlock allies in play, the players lose the game. So if they defeat those 2 Morlocks I have, or they get 8 threat on here, we lose the game. Alright, we gotta go shuffle this into play, into the deck. And what the Hide thing is it's actually a good thing for us. When it is revealed as the encounter, so if we get this as our encounter, we get to give a Morlock ally a tough status card. And then it gains Surge, which means we have to do another encounter card. It also has a boost that gives us a Morlock ally a tough status card, but then it gives the villain an additional boost card. So that's the reason it's giving us this action where we can exhaust a Morlock ally to shuffle it back into our deck so that we can toughen up our Morlocks. But as you can see, this is a thick deck, so our odds of hitting it are kind of slim. Gave it about 30 shuffles there, so those return. And all that was him pulling off his activation. Minions would activate. There's no minions in play. So next we go to the encounter phase. Deal ourselves an encounter card. Now we have to deal with the encounter card, which is another side scheme. Now when I said there was a limit to the side schemes, it meant only to the player side schemes. This is a regular side scheme. It's going to get 3 threat on it. Oh, I forgot to mention also, this has the same acceleration, but it starts with no threat on it. But anyways, this one gets 3 on it. And then it says, when revealed, place 1 additional threat per player here for each villain under routed. There are no villains under routed, so 1 times 0 is 0. So it's just going to have 3 on it. And also, what side schemes typically do is give these little symbols. Just waiting on the focus there. There we go. These little symbols. What this symbol is, as long as this is in play... Oh man, that... Unfortunately, I'm not able to get rid of that glare, so I'm just going to move these over and just put it there. So marauding ain't easy. Alright. Well, that was the encounter step, so back to my hero phase. Alright, first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and have Caliban here attack and take out Grey Crow, because he's going to do 2 + 1, 3 damage to Grey Crow, which is enough to KO him. So Grey Crow goes under routed here. And the force response is that after that happens, discard each minion that shares a title. Because normally this would be a face-up stack. It's the way I do it, is it face-up. So we're going to reveal this new one, which is Blockbuster. And if Blockbuster minion was in play, it would remove the Blockbuster villain from play. And then now the villain activates against each player in player order. Blockbuster gets 11 damage, or 11 hit points per player. So let's put him at his 11. And before we do that activation, whether it's going to happen or not, Caliban, there's nothing Caliban can do about this. He's taking the consequence damage because he's done attacking. So he gets knocked out. And now Blockbuster is activating against Nathan Summers. I did not think this through because now he is in alter ego form, which means he is going to now just scheme. We don't have anything I can do about that, so he is scheming for 0. His forced interrupt is only when he attacks, so he's scheming for 0 plus 1 plus another 1, so he's scheming for 2 plus there's a boost. If this activation is an attack, it gains overkill. Overkill just says that if they were to attack and say, in that case, Caliban only had 1 hit point left, and they were doing 5 damage, and Caliban blocked or defended, Caliban would absorb 1 of that damage, the other 4 would overkill through and do damage extra. But in this case, it does nothing. It's just, it's not an attack, it's a scheme, so it's just +1, +1, so +2. So 2 threat added to the scheme. Not good, 2 to the 8. They're already 25% of the way there. I'm going to exhaust the Professor, because I'm in alter ego form, to either draw a card or go get a side scheme. I'm just going to... I'll go to draw a card. I was looking for a resource anyways, but I was like, maybe I'll draw something that I could use. Because unfortunately, this Uncanny X-Force does not work well in this scenario. Because it's if each of your characters has the X-Force trait. Unfortunately, I have 2 Morlocks that do not have the X-Force trait. So this is kind of a useless card to me. Let's go ahead and switch to my hero form. Sorry if you saw some cards shifted. Only because I just realized there were some camera issues. And I had done a couple things. I think I reset back. We'll see. Hopefully I can fix it in edit, but I think I reset back to where I noticed the camera, which was right before I had done some stuff with cable. Let's bring out Deathlock. He costs 4 to bring out. So I have to discard 4. Remember, Greymalkin says I can exhaust Greymalkin to generate 1 resource. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4. So there's 4 resources to pay for Deathlock. And he says as a hero response, because I'm in hero form, after Deathlock enters play, choose an upgrade in any player's discard pile with a cost of 1 or less that can be attached to Deathlock and attach it to him. So I get to go in here and look for any upgrade that costs 1 or less. Well, that was pretty easy. I only had one upgrade that costs 1 or less that can attach, and it's to an ally, which is the one we already saw, which gives him +1 attack and the ranged. So that is on Deathlock there. Next, I'm going to have Cable go ahead and thwart that Technovirus Purge for 2. So he gets enough to remove the Technovirus Purge, which is going to take care of that. This goes to the victory display. I'm just going to put it over here so I don't forget, and we'll just have the victory display up here. But now he has +1 attack, +1 thwart, and +1 defense, and the psionic trait. But also, he has a response here that says, after Cable defeats a side scheme, ready him once per phase. So I get to ready him. But Greymalkin also says, after a side scheme is defeated, ready Greymalkin. And that one is not limited once per phase. So next, we're going to exhaust Greymalkin to play this card for 1. It's another player side scheme. It says it's going to be 3 per player, so 3 on there. When defeated, each player may search their deck and discard pile for an ally and put it into play. So we put this into play with 3 threat on it. Call for backup. We're going to exhaust Cable. Remember, he's got +1 thwart this time, so he's going to thwart for 3 on the call for backup, which is enough to remove all the threat from call for backup. So now it was defeated, so we get to search our deck and discard pile for an ally and put it into play. But this goes to the victory display, so we can't just do that again. I was thinking about putting Caliban and getting Caliban, which might let me go get Phantom X and or Deadpool and put them into play anyways. But I think in this case I'm going to go for Phantom X. Nah, I'm still going to go get Caliban, so we're just going to reshuffle. Which it said search through your deck or discard pile. You're going to shuffle either way. So since I went through my deck, we're going to shuffle anyways. So let's do a few shuffles here. And so that I don't forget, I did just now remove a side scheme from play. Now, I cannot ready Cable because it said once per phase, but Greymalkin does not, so it does get to ready. Alright, so like I said, we're going to go do Caliban. So Caliban gets to come into play because of call for backup. Which his response was, after Caliban enters play, discard cards from the top of your deck until an X-Factor, X-Force, or X-Men ally is discarded. So it's going to be Deadpool or Phantom X. Of course, how many cards do we discard before we hit them? Oh my goodness. Not good. So we hit Phantom X anyways, which I was kind of torn. I was like, I could take either of them, but so we put Phantom X into our hand. We're going to go ahead and exhaust Greymalkin and discard Body Slide here to do a Mind Scan, which is remove 3 threat from a scheme, remove 1 additional threat from that scheme for each side scheme in the victory display, which there are 2. But it don't matter. We're just doing 3 so that we can get rid of this Marauding ain't easy. So that boost ain't going on anymore. Which is going to ready Grey Malkin. We're going to exhaust Deathlock to attack Blockbuster for 2/3 damage. And then he takes a consequence. Then we're going to exhaust Caliban to attack Blockbuster for 2 damage. And he takes a consequence. And we'll use 1 Morlock and exhaust it to do 1 damage to Blockbuster. And then it takes 1 consequence damage. Let's just go ahead. And we'll have the other Morlock attack Blockbuster for another damage. And there we go. Alright, with that, I'm going to go to the end of my turn. I'm going to keep Phantom X in hand. We draw up to our hand size of 5, so we draw 4 new cards. 1, 2, 3, 4. Ready all of our cards. We're just kind of piling onto these guys, hopefully. Top of the turn. First step, villain phase. Add 1 threat to the main scheme. 3 to 8. Next, Blockbuster is going to activate. I am in hero form. But remember, he's not attacking me, he's attacking a Morlock. So I'll say he's attacking this Morlock. And the reason I have to designate is because if he gets overkill or something from the boost card. I will have Cable defend. And I know there's other stuff I have to do first, but I'm just going ahead and doing this on this camera. So Cable is defending the attack against this Morlock. Alright. I mean, doesn't matter, but first thing we have to do, we have to choose to either give him a tough status card or give him +2 attack for this attack. I'm going to give him a tough status card. So I'm going to put it on his hit points so we don't forget. So right now he's doing 2 plus his boost card, which is +1, so 2, 3 damage. Remember, because of the Technovirus Purge, I have a 3 defense, so I defended all 3 damage. Next we go to, there's no minions, so next we go to the encounter. The encounter is hide. So when revealed, give 1 Morlock ally a tough status card. We'll give the one that just defended, or was getting attacked, a tough status card. But this now has Surge, which means we have to do another encounter, which is Assault. When revealed, if I'm in alter ego form, this gains Surge. When revealed hero form, the villain attacks you. So I'm in hero form. It's attacking me, but remember, it's not attacking me. It's attacking a Morlock. I'm going to choose to have it attack this Morlock with the tough status. And in this case, it says when a Blockbuster attacks you or an ally, which is attacking that ally, give him a tough status card or +2 attack for this attack. I'm just going to say he gets +2 attacks. It doesn't matter because he has tough. Unless something gives him piercing, but we'll get into that. Here's his boost card for that attack, which is this, which does give him some stuff. This card gets come on, focus. This card gets +X boost icons, where X is the number of villains under routed. Okay, normally it attaches, but it didn't do that. It just says it gets +X boost icons, where X is the number of villains under routed, which there's only 1. So it's getting +1, +2, plus another 2, so 4, 5, 6. He would take 6 damage, but he's got the tough status, so he takes no damage. We go to the beginning of my phase, of my turn again, which I didn't think this through because I defended. Oh well. I was thinking Cable would be able to go over there and clean that up, but I guess it's better than the Morlock taking a bunch of damage. So here we go. Oh, I don't know why I didn't unexhaust that, but that's unexhausted also. I'm running out of space here. I'm just going to move this all over a little bit. Because I want to bring Phantom X into play. So I'm going to exhaust Grey Malkin here for 1. 2, 3, 4. To bring Phantom X into play. Remember, I have a limit of 3 allies. These do not count. Now, this does say, as a response, after Phantom X enters play, I search my deck and discard pile for EVA and put it into play. Always just said EVA. But I know I discarded it earlier. What did I do with it? I'll say I know it's in my discard pile because I discarded it earlier. So, there it is. This goes to my hand. Oh no, it says put it into play. Hey, let's do that. I like it. So this goes into play. Definitely getting crunched on space here. EVA, support. If Phantom X is not in play, discard EVA. He is. As an action, I can exhaust this to either remove 1 threat from a scheme, or deal 1 damage to an enemy, or heal 1 damage from Phantom X. Well, let's start off and have Phantom X go ahead and attack Blockbuster for 1, which is enough to remove his tough status. And that causes Phantom X to take a damage for consequence. I'm going to exhaust EVA to remove the 1 consequence or the 1 damage from Phantom X. Probably didn't need to do that, probably because it's done damage, but I'm going to have Deathlock. Attack Blockbuster for 3. And then Deathlock takes a consequence damage. I'm going to have this Morlock B here, attack and finish off Blockbuster. I'm going to go ahead and give him the consequence damage so I don't forget while we go ahead and remove Blockbuster. Put him underneath the routed. Get our new one, Harpoon. There are no means in play, so Harpoon is now our new villain. He gets 10 hit points per player. So, 10 hit points. I'm going to have Caliban attack Harpoon for 2 damage. Taking him to 8. And then Caliban takes a consequence damage. Guess I should have had some thwarting happen. So I'm going to go ahead and have this Morlock thwart the main scheme for 1, which is going to cause a consequence damage. And I was going to go in alter ego form, but I don't think I want to take a chance of a scheme happening. I think someone's just going to eat it in the face from Harpoon. So here we go. Go to the end of my turn. Let me see how many cards I have left in deck. Because the thing is, if I draw out my deck, it causes an acceleration thing to go on the main scheme, which is going to make it gain more threat each turn. I have 5 cards left in deck, so if I were to discard this, drawn up to my hand size, would make my deck trigger. So I don't want to do that. So I'm going to keep this in hand, which means I only draw 4, leaving 1 card left in my deck. So I drew. Alright. Ready all this mess of cards here. And I think this is one that, let's see what happens here, but I think I got it. First things first, add 1 threat to the acceleration. Step 1, accelerate the scheme by 1 threat per player. Next, I am in hero form, so he's going to attack. We'll go with the other Morlock this time. He's going to attack this Morlock. And I just realized I have to go back. There's something I skipped and forgot. When Harpoon came into play, oh man, this is going to mess up a lot of things. Because when he came into play, I forgot to have him activate. And now that I'm exhausted, I don't remember who was exhausted and who wasn't. Pretty sure it was a Morlock that finished off Blockbuster. So Caliban and the other Morlock were unexhausted. Pretty sure I'm right about that. And in that case, I'm not going to take back that the Morlock did that. What I am going to take back is the attack Caliban did. So Harpoon did not take that damage from Caliban attacking. Pretty sure I'm right about that. If I'm wrong, I just got to do something. Either that or just let a Morlock get knocked out. I think that's the easiest thing to do. But I'm pretty sure Caliban was the one that done the 2 damage there. So that means he definitely was unexhausted. So that means when Harpoon had to activate, I would have had Caliban defend the Morlock. And since Caliban's going to die from that attack anyways, I'm just going to go ahead and give it the additional boost card. So 2 and 3, 4, 5, 6. And the boost, if you control a Morlock ally, choose to either deal 1 damage to it or spend 1 resource of any type. I had a card, but I'm not going to say I would have discarded that one because I've already drawn cards and done things. So I'm just going to say I'm going to deal damage to a Morlock ally. I'm sorry. I know things have changed, but that definitely would be a change that I would feel would be tainted. So I'm just going to give... I'm pretty sure Caliban done that 2 damage to Harpoon. So I'm just going to pretend like he got knocked out before he could do that 2 damage to Harpoon. And then the Morlock... I know with the Morlock I thwarted, but instead we're just going to do that instead. Alright. I think that fixes it all. I'm not sure. Hopefully I didn't screw that up too much. And the only reason I thought about it is because now Harpoon has to attack, or is going to attack again. Or activate again. He is attacking again. I am going to defend with Cable. I'm going to have it attack this Morlock. Oh, what am I going to do? The 2 indirect damage or give Harpoon 1 additional face down boost card. I'm going to do the indirect damage. I'm going to put it on Phantom X here. Alright, so now boost card gets +1. So that's 2, 3 damage. Cable has a defense of 3, so he defended all 3 of the damage. Now we go to the encounter step, where he's going to scheme. When revealed, the villain schemes for 0 plus his boost. So he's scheming for 1, putting 4 to the 8. And then now we go to the beginning of my turn. Sorry about that confusion. Oh, that just got all messed up. I got so carried away with thinking I had it. I just didn't pay attention to making sure I had it. Alright, I want to do telekinetic blast here. So, it costs 3. I'm going to use Grey Malkin and discard these 2 to do Telekinetic Blast. It's an event. That means it's a one-time use card. It's a hero action. I have to be in hero form. It's an action I do. It's an attack. It says deal 6 damage to an enemy. Deal 1 additional damage to that enemy for each side scheme in the victory display. There are 2 side schemes in the victory display. So, that is 8 damage to Harpoon. I don't know why I went the long way here. And then, yeah, we'll just have... You know what? Since they're trying to take out the Morlocks, we'll have the Morlocks each take a consequence damage. This one almost get knocked out because of it. But that should be enough to take out Harpoon and each take a consequence damage. I'm so sorry about that. Mess up in the bad guy thing. Typically they don't attack. I don't know why. I just didn't think about that. I think it's because I had something else going on in my mind at the time. But all in all, yeah, I actually did enjoy that one. I didn't think I would. I think it was the same. I'm gonna have to go with, because if you watched my other video, I always talk about when they release two people, usually the one I'm looking forward to the most, I don't enjoy as much as I thought I would. And I end up enjoying the other one and this was two characters I do like, but I like Cable more, so I was really looking forward to Cable. But I really enjoyed playing Domino, but it was also my play style. But I kind of like the way these side schemes work. I mean, that's kind of a cool little thing. Like, if you can find a way to just take care of them, I mean, go and get any ally or just being able to pull those off. And I'm sure they're going to come out with more of these. So, that's cool. So I kind of like these even. And it was the same way with Storm and Wolverine. I was really looking forward to playing Storm. And I liked how fast Wolverine could just melt things. But Storm was still fun to play. As a matter of fact, I went and made a Storm Aggression deck that it's a Storm Aggression all allies that doesn't have a single attack event in it other than the attack event from her main deck, like the 15 cards of hers. And I love playing that deck. That was fun. And I played it during one of the campaigns. I think it was the Spider-Man one. And it was so fun. I enjoyed playing that deck. Kept it together. It was a great fun deck. But anyways, that's enough jibber jabber on that. I did enjoy playing this. It was fun. Almost feels too easy against these guys. I don't know if that's just his deck or maybe that. Or maybe I'm just more of an experienced player. But either way, that was fun. Not going to take too long talking about it. Hope y'all enjoyed watching these. I will continue to do this. So when they release Angel and Psylocke and the hero decks, I will do them against these guys. And we'll see if that just continues to feel like they are easy. Or maybe I'm doing something wrong. I'll go back through the playthrough or through the edit, see if I did screw that up and I was wrong about what happened with Caliban there. I guess worst case scenario, one of the Morlocks would have got knocked out there. I still would have had another Morlock. So I still would have won this. It just would have been not both Morlocks. But either way, that was fun. I enjoyed it. If you're enjoying these, definitely give me a like, man. I do notice these videos are the ones that give me the most views on my channel. So it's why I focus as much as I can on this. If you are interested in these Cable and Domino, I mentioned it in the unboxing. I did not mention it in the Domino video. I'll probably put some words up. This is not available until August the 18th. I did get it early because Asmodee sent them out in case the strike happened with UPS. Sounds like it didn't, so I did get a hold of it ahead of time, but I cannot sell it until August the 18th. And that's how I'm able to sit here and play this. I just couldn't resist getting a chance to play it. And we'll definitely be demoing this along with the campaign here in the store, probably on Mondays again. That's where we normally do the demos of this or Arkham Horror. And we also have the new Arkham Horror, not really the new, but the revised release of the Circle Undone. We'll be demoing that one also. But cool. That was fun. I think I will go back. I didn't think about it till this video, or was it the Domino one where I realized I'd never done the scenario packs for the villains, so I need to go do Mojo and all of them. Kang and all them. So I'll probably do something with their, probably find out where they came out in the cycle and do one of the heroes from that, I guess, in that cycle, or maybe show one of my decks. I don't know. We'll see what I decide to do, but definitely on my radar now. Long story short, hope you enjoyed this. If you did, give me a thumbs up. Also, make sure you're subscribed. But thank you for watching, and have a great day.